The moment that veteran was humiliated in public felt painfully sharp. An old man stood stiffly in front of a grand shopping center in the city. The clothes he wore were shabby, their color faded, the pants slightly tore at the knee, and his jacket looked worn clinging to his back. His gaze was fixed straight ahead, as if waiting for someone, even though it was clear that people around him were staring at him with puzzled eyes. In the mall parking lot full of luxury cars, 2 patrol police officers were walking casually while chatting. As soon as they saw the old veteran standing near the entrance, they exchanged glances. One of the officers pointed toward the old man with a mocking expression, then approached him without hesitation. The mocking voices began to echo. "Hey, old man, this isn't the place for begging," one of the police said with a small laugh. The old man remained silent, did not turn his head, continued to stand tall, hugging his jacket. "You think people here will give you spare change? Get out of here," added the other officer in a harsh tone. Some shoppers entering and exiting the shopping center began to notice. Some laughed. Others felt pity but did not dare to approach. The atmosphere turned awkward, but no one was brave enough to help the old man. A light drizzle started to fall, making the atmosphere even more gloomy. The veteran pulled his jacket tighter, bracing against the cold, but still did not move from his spot. His eyes occasionally glanced toward the main road, as if waiting for something. The police felt disturbed by the veteran's unshaken stance. One of them patted the old man's shoulder roughly. "I told you to leave. Don't ruin the view of this place," he said scornfully. The old man took a deep breath, then answered with a hoarse voice, "I'm used to standing." That answer made the police laugh even louder. To them, this old man was nothing but city trash, unworthy of standing at the entrance of a fancy shopping center. At the same time, a small child passed by and looked at him with pity. The veteran only gave him a thin smile, trying not to scare the child. The tension rose when a mall security guard joined in and told the veteran to leave. All eyes were now on him, turning the situation into a cheap spectacle. But the veteran continued to stand, refusing to be forced away, even though his body was starting to shiver against the increasingly biting cold air. Then, among the sound of rain and the noise of the parking lot, a distant engine roar could faintly be heard. That sound made the veteran turn slightly, his eyes changing, as if signaling that something was about to happen. The atmosphere began to shift, though no one yet realized what was about to unfold next. The drizzle turned into a steady rain, forcing people to pull out umbrellas or run for shelter. But the veteran remained still, his feet rooted firmly on the wet pavement. Water dripped from the edge of his old jacket, soaking the already torn fabric, yet he showed no sign of discomfort. The 2 police officers who had mocked him earlier stood not far away, talking in low voices. Their laughter had faded, replaced by annoyance. They did not understand why this shabby old man would dare to stand there stubbornly, ignoring their harsh words. Nearby, a woman holding shopping bags paused to watch. Her eyes darted between the veteran and the police. She seemed hesitant, perhaps wanting to help but too afraid to intervene. A young boy beside her tugged her hand, whispering, "Mom, why are they yelling at Grandpa?" The mother did not answer, only pulling her son closer and hurrying away. More people started to notice the scene, gathering under the eaves of the shopping center to avoid the rain. They whispered to each other, creating a tense hum in the air. A man took out his phone to record, pointing the camera straight at the veteran's soaked figure. The police officer closest to the veteran stepped forward once again. "Listen, old man, you're making people uncomfortable. If you don't leave, I'll have to drag you away," he threatened coldly. The veteran looked up at him, his eyes calm, with a faint spark of pride hidden within them. "I am waiting," he replied softly. Those 3 words seemed to cut through the officer's authority. He frowned, confused by the old man's mysterious calmness. The mall security guard joined in again, this time sounding more nervous. "Sir, we cannot allow you to stand here any longer. This is private property." The veteran only nodded, acknowledging the words, but did not move. His gaze once more drifted toward the main road, as if measuring the distance of something drawing closer. The security guard exchanged a worried look with the police. The situation felt odd, almost eerie, like there was something about this old man they could not understand. Suddenly, a sleek black luxury car turned the corner, its polished body glimmering under the rain. The low hum of its powerful engine caught the attention of everyone nearby. The car slowed down, moving with purpose through the puddles, then stopped right in front of the veteran. The entire crowd fell silent. The veteran shifted slightly, as if he had been expecting this moment all along. A thin, knowing smile appeared on his lips, but he remained still, waiting for the next move. The police officers and the security guard could only stare, stunned, unable to make sense of what was happening right before their eyes. The rain continued to drum steadily on the pavement, adding a rhythmic tension to the silence that had fallen over the crowd. The sleek black luxury car remained parked in front of the veteran, its engine humming softly as if announcing something important. After a brief moment, the rear passenger door opened with a smooth motion. A man in a formal suit stepped out, holding a large umbrella. Without hesitation, he walked toward the veteran with quick, respectful steps. The man in the suit stopped just before the veteran, lowered his head slightly, and spoke with a voice full of respect. "Good afternoon, sir. Sorry for the delay." The veteran nodded faintly, acknowledging the greeting, but still did not move. Water continued to drip from his jacket, but somehow he looked dignified standing there, as though the rain had no power to humble him. The suited man glanced toward the police and security guard, then back at the veteran. "Please, let me help you to the car," he offered gently, extending his arm in a formal gesture. Murmurs rose from the onlookers. Some people raised their phones higher to record the scene, while others exchanged shocked looks. The police officer who had mocked the veteran earlier took an awkward step back, his face pale with surprise. He looked completely thrown off by the respectful attitude of the suited man toward the person he had just insulted moments before. The veteran finally made a small movement, shifting his weight as if to prepare for a long walk. His voice, still raspy but calm, broke the silence once again. "Thank you for coming," he said, simple yet full of quiet strength. The suited man bowed his head politely once more, then stepped aside so the veteran could pass. Slowly, the veteran moved toward the open car door. Every pair of eyes watched him, stunned, trying to understand how a man who looked so poor and worn out could receive such honor. Before getting into the car, the veteran paused and turned slightly toward the police officers. For a moment, his gaze pierced through them, steady and unwavering, as if leaving them to reflect on their own actions. Without a word, he nodded once, then stepped into the luxury car. The suited man closed the door carefully, shielding him from the rain with the umbrella until the very last second. The crowd was completely silent, their disbelief hanging thick in the air. The luxury car remained still for a heartbeat, then slowly began to move away, cutting to the puddles with quiet power. The police officers, security guard, and onlookers were left standing in the rain, their minds reeling at what they had just witnessed. The luxury car drove slowly to the parking lot, its taillights glowing softly in the rain. Inside, the veteran leaned back against the leather seat, breathing out a calm sigh. The warmth of the car contrasted sharply with the cold wind that had just battered his worn-out coat. The suited man who had helped him earlier took the front passenger seat, glancing back with genuine concern. "Is everything all right, sir?" he asked with a careful tone. The veteran nodded slightly, keeping his gaze forward. Raindrops trailed across the window like silent tears, blurring the outside world. "Yes, I'm all right," he replied briefly. Meanwhile, outside, the crowd was still frozen in disbelief. The two police officers stood with their uniforms damp, unsure how to react after what they had just witnessed. Their expressions were a mixture of regret and embarrassment. One of them spoke in a hushed voice. "Who was that old man, really?" The other officer shook his head, unable to answer, still stunned. Nearby, a teenager who had recorded everything on his phone whispered to his friend, "This is going to go viral, man. No one will believe this." The mall security guard slowly stepped back into the entrance, trying to disappear from the awkward scene, but the memory of what it had done to the veteran kept echoing in his mind. As the car exited the shopping center area and merged onto the main road, the veteran closed his eyes for a moment. In his heart, he carried a quiet satisfaction. He never needed to prove anything to anyone, But fate had its own way of revealing the truth. He remembered the police officer's mocking voice, the look of pity from a child, the cold rain seeping into his thin clothes. It all replayed in his mind like a distant echo. Yet through it all, he felt no anger, only a deep, silent lesson that true dignity could never be stripped away, no matter how ragged the clothes or how harsh the world's judgment. The suited man in the front seat spoke again. "The others are waiting, sir. Shall we go straight there?" The veteran opened his eyes, looking forward calmly. "Yes, let's go," he answered firmly. The car accelerated smoothly, leaving behind the crowded shopping center, the rain, and the stares of those who had doubted him. The veteran sat in silence as the city lights flickered past the window, each one reflecting on the raindrops that still clung to the glass. The hum of the engine and the faint patter of rain blended together, forming a quiet background to his drifting thoughts. Memories began to surface. Memories of battlefields, of brothers-in-arms who had never made a home, of long nights under a cold sky with nothing but courage to keep them alive. The medals, the uniforms, the salutes, they had all faded away, leaving behind only scars, both seen and unseen. Yet even now, so many years later, he could still feel the weight of that responsibility on his shoulders. The suited man, sensing the veteran's quiet reflection, did not interrupt. He had learned that silence was sometimes the greatest sign of respect. After a few minutes, the veteran finally spoke, his voice steady despite the emotion buried within it. "I didn't want any attention. I was just remembering." The suited man nodded, responding with calm understanding. "It is an honor to serve you, sir," he said softly. The veteran looked out the window again, catching a glimpse of a small street where children were playing despite the drizzle. Their laughter carried through glass, faint but bright, reminding him of something pure and hopeful. Deep inside, a quiet strength returned to him, stronger than any uniform or medal could ever give. The car soon turned into a quiet neighborhood, lined with simple but well-maintained houses. In front of one of them, a group of people stood waiting, holding umbrellas. They were men and women of all ages, many in modest clothing, but their eyes shone with respect and admiration. As the car slowed to a stop, the suited man stepped out again and opened the door for the veteran. The veteran paused before stepping out, taking a deep breath. The rain had eased into a gentle mist, softening the world around him. Then he stepped onto the wet pavement, standing tall. The people waiting began to clap slowly, their applause full of quiet gratitude. Their voices rose one by one. "Welcome home, sir. We've been waiting for you." The veteran looked at them, one by one, recognizing some faces from long ago, from days when he was still in uniform, still fighting for their peace. Without a single word, he nodded in acknowledgement, and a warm smile crossed his weathered face. The gentle applause from the gathered crowd wrapped around the veteran like a comforting blanket, warming him after the long, cold humiliation he had endured. He stood quietly under the soft rain, feeling every beat of gratitude in those clapping hands. The suited man remained respectfully behind him, holding the umbrella to shield the veteran from the drizzle. In front of them, men and women stepped forward one by one, offering their hands, their smiles, their words of welcome. "Thank you for coming back. We never forgot you." Each greeting carried a piece of the past, a recognition of sacrifices no one else had seen. The veterans shook their hands firmly, feeling the sincerity behind their eyes. Nearby, a young mother approached, carrying a small girl who could not have been more than 4 years old. The little girl reached out shyly, offering the veteran a tiny folded drawing on crumpled paper. The veteran accepted it gently. The drawing was simple, a stick figure with a medal on its chest, smiling under a bright sun. His heart tightened at the sight. "For you, Mr. Soldier," the child said with a soft, innocent voice. He bent down a little, meeting the girl's gaze, and nodded with genuine warmth. "Thank you," he whispered, so quietly only she could hear. Behind the veteran, the suited man watched with silent respect. He had seen many powerful people in his life, but none commanded the same deep admiration that this humble, ragged veteran inspired. As the applause subsided, someone in the group stepped forward and announced, "Sir, the dinner is ready inside. We would be honored if you joined us." The veteran looked toward the modest house, its lights shining softly through the rain-slicked windows. He could smell the aroma of warm food, hear the faint laughter of people gathering to honor him. He took a long breath, closing his eyes for a moment to steady himself. "I would be honored," he replied firmly. The group parted to make way for him. With steady steps, he moved toward the house, his head held high, leaving the suited man to close the car door behind them. The rain had nearly stopped now, as if the skies themselves showed respect for a man who had weathered so many storms in silence. The veteran stepped carefully over the threshold of the small house, welcomed by the glow of warm lamps and the comforting scent of freshly cooked food. The simple dining room was filled with people, young and old, families and neighbors, all gathered to share this moment with him. The table had been set with modest but inviting dishes. Steam rose from bowls of rice, fragrant soup, and vegetables freshly cooked. The veteran paused for a moment, taking in the sight. It was a world away from the harsh, cold pavement where he had stood just hours earlier. Someone pulled out a chair for him at the head of the table, showing deep respect. The veteran nodded in gratitude and slowly took his seat, folding his hands politely in his lap. As everyone settled down, a hush fell over the room. All eyes turned toward the veteran, and a middle-aged man near the end of the table rose to speak. "Sir, tonight we gather not only to eat but to honor you," he began with a steady, respectful voice. "What you have done for us will never be forgotten. We know life has not been fair to you since you returned, but please remember, we see you and we are grateful." The veteran swallowed, his throat tightening as the weight of those words sank in. He lowered his eyes for a moment, overwhelmed, before looking back up with a steady gaze. "I only did what was right," he answered softly. "I would do it again if I had to." The room fell silent for a few seconds, everyone absorbing his quiet strength. Then, one by one, people began to nod, their eyes shining with respect. The middle-aged man spoke again. "Please, sir, your family here. Share this meal with us." Slowly, bowls of rice and plates of warm dishes were passed around. The veteran accepted a bowl with steady hands, taking the aroma and the love behind it. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe deeply, to feel truly welcome, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. As the meal began, laughter and conversation returned to the room. Children chattered happily, old friends traded stories, and the warm glow of the house pushed away every chill of the rainy night outside. The veteran listened quietly, occasionally joining in with a gentle smile. No one asked about the humiliating scene at the shopping center, and he was grateful for that. They simply let him be a man among neighbors, respected and accepted. In that simple house, around that humble table, he found something more valuable than medals or praise. He found belonging. The dinner slowly came to an end, with plates scraped clean and warm tea served in chipped but cherished cups. The veteran leaned back in his chair, watching people around him talk and laugh, their faces lit with genuine affection. Someone put on a small radio in the corner, playing soft, nostalgic music. The sound blended with the steady hum of conversation, creating an atmosphere of quiet peace. The veteran closed his eyes for a moment, letting the calm sink into his bones. Outside, the last drops of rain slid down the windows, washing away the grime of the day. The suited man, who had stayed respectfully in the background, finally stepped closer. "Sir, if you wish, I can take you to a hotel for the night," he offered. The veteran opened his eyes, considering the offer, but then shook his head gently. "I would rather stay here," he said firmly, glancing around the room. "Among friends." The suited man nodded, understanding, and stepped back. Someone offered the veteran a folded blanket, apologizing for its worn edges, but he accepted it gratefully. To him, its warmth was worth far more than the finest sheets. In the quiet corners of the room, older men began to share their own stories. They spoke of hardships, of days working for low wages, of being ignored by a world obsessed with wealth and appearance. The veteran listened, realizing he was not alone in carrying wounds that no one else could see. Slowly, the talk circled back to him, and one young man asked softly, "Sir, why did you stand there today, even when they insulted you?" The veteran took a moment before answering. His voice was calm, steady, yet full of depth. "Because," he said, "I knew that if I stood firm, something good would come. Dignity does not depend on what you wear. It depends on what you believe. The young man nodded, taking those words to heart. A few others looked down, reflecting on the lesson they had just heard. The veteran folded the blanket across his lap, feeling its warmth. The humiliation of the day seemed like a distant shadow now, replaced by a sense of quiet triumph. He glanced at the door, where the rain had finally stopped, leaving the night air fresh and clear. Tomorrow would be another day, but tonight he was home, among those who saw his true worth. As the evening settled deeper into the night, the house grew calmer. People began to leave one by one, offering handshakes and respectful bows before stepping out into the damp night air. Each farewell carried a warmth that lingered in the veteran's heart. Soon, only a few stayed behind, tidying up plates and sweeping crumbs from the table. The veteran insisted on helping, moving slowly but with determination, refusing to let others see him as weak. Someone tried to stop him, but he shook his head with a faint smile. "I can still carry my share," he said, steady and calm. The room smelled of leftover spices, tea, and the faint scent of wet earth drifting in from the open window. The suited man remained at the doorway, hands folded respectfully, keeping a watchful eye in case a veteran needed anything. The veteran folded the last blanket, placed it on a chair, then paused to look around. There was a quiet, peaceful hum in the house that reminded him of faraway barracks, a place where men and women looked after one another, regardless of rank or riches. For a moment, he closed his eyes, remembering comrades who had not made it home, promises left on muddy battlefields, voices lost to time. His heart grew heavy, but only for a breath. He opened his eyes, letting out a long, steady exhale. He had survived. He had returned. One of the older women, who had been sweeping near the door, stopped and looked at him kindly. "Sir, if you need anything tonight, please knock on my door," she said. The veteran nodded with quiet gratitude. "Thank you," he answered softly. Slowly, the remaining guests left, leaving the veteran in a simple room with a narrow bed and a single lamp. He sat down, feeling the ache of age and hardship in every joint, but refusing to let it bend his spirit. The suited man stepped closer one last time. "Sir, I will wait outside until morning, just in case," he said. The veteran looked at him, studying the lines of respect and loyalty on his face. "Rest if you can," he replied calmly. "You have done enough." The suited man bowed slightly, then stepped out, leaving the veteran alone in the gentle glow of the lamp. For a while, the veteran stared at the folded blanket on the bed, thinking of the day that had begun with cruel words and ended with true dignity restored. Outside, the night was quiet, the rain gone, and a pale moon rising beyond the rooftops. He laid down at last, letting the softness of the bed cradle him. Sleep came slowly but peacefully, carrying him away on dreams of simpler days, of laughter and of hope. The first light of dawn slipped through the thin curtains, painting the small room with a pale golden glow. The veteran opened his eyes slowly, feeling a gentle warmth on his face. For the first time in many nights, he woke without the weight of shame pressing on his chest. He sat up on the simple bed, listening to the faint sounds of morning. Birds calling, footsteps outside, and the clink of someone preparing breakfast in a nearby kitchen. Rising with calm purpose, he folded the blanket neatly and set it aside. Every small movement felt meaningful, as if each action stitched back a piece of his dignity. He stepped out of the room, greeted by the suited man who had waited outside all night. The man looked tired but alert, bowing his head respectfully. "Good morning, sir," he said quietly. The veteran nodded, his eyes steady. "Good morning," he replied, his voice firm and clear. In the living room, a few people were already gathered. They stood as he entered, their faces bright with respect, welcoming him like a hero returned from distant lands. The middle-aged man who had spoken the night before stepped forward with a calm smile. "Sir, breakfast is ready. Please join us." The veteran moved toward the table, taking his place as if it had always belonged to him. The chatter around him was gentle, free from pity, filled only with admiration. As he began to eat, he listened to the morning conversations, talk of work, of children's school, of hopes for a better future. It felt honest and alive, reminded him of everything he had once fought to protect. At that moment, he understood fully. His worth had never depended on medals or uniforms, nor on how the world judged the clothes on his back. His true worth lived in the quiet respect of people who saw beyond appearances, in the calm knowledge that he had stood firm for what was right. After finishing his meal, he rose and thanked everyone with a slow, respectful nod. "I will not forget your kindness," he said softly. The suited man approached once more, offering to escort him, but the veteran shook his head gently. "No," he said with a quiet smile. "Today, I will walk on my own." He stepped out into the cool morning air, the sun now shining stronger, drying the last traces of last night's rain. Each step was steady, carrying him forward with a pride no one could ever steal away again. The people watched him go, their eyes following a man who had faced both cruelty and honor and walked through them with unbroken spirit. And so he moved ahead into a new day, knowing that even harshest judgment could not take away the dignity of a heart that refused to bow.